Tap into your information. Elastic. Yeah. You can call us supportive if it's something that's drastic. Yeah. You can sign up for training if you needing practice. Yeah. Better relax. Elastic.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I was reading in the comments, and there are people like all over the world. Literally, we have folks in Paraguay, Jakarta, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, of course, Australia, New Zealand. So, well, it's a pleasure having you guys here. We know the time zone can be a challenge, but here we are. We won't give up. And I'm Gabi, Gabi Amaral. I've been working at Elastic for 2 years and a half. Oh yeah, Jupiter also. I'm sorry, I forgot about you. Uh, yeah, so I'm in charge of the community in APJ. And well, we haven't been doing a lot of virtual meetups, but I figure why not, right? We have incredible talents. And yeah, that's why I'm here. So, well, thank you very much for you all. I think you're listening to me. So now I'll do a quickly presentation about our community in APJ. If you could just say something in the comments if you can see my screen, if everything is all right. I promise I won't take long. I know you're not here to see me and to see me talking about community at Elastic, blah blah blah. I know you want to hear Kwabena and Adrian, of course. They are the stars. I'm fine with that. So yeah. So let me talk about like what is community and what is DevRel's role at Elastic. So the Elastic community is made up of users, practitioners, and customers, software developers, DevOps, security experts who use and build on the stack. And our team, the DevRel team, we are here to make the community successful via education and engagement. So we want you guys to learn how, like, better ways of using Elastic, how to make the most out of it, getting to know other people too, doing networking at the community. I think a lot of people are very active in the community because of that too. So yeah, and I got this quote from Shai Bannon, our CTO and founder, that about our team. That's basically we help make the technology adoption easier and provide feedback to engineering and product management to influence the roadmap of our products. We are responsible for raising awareness about the Elastic Stack. And a lot of people don't know like everything that we offer in our developer relations. I feel like most people know like about organizing meetups and sponsoring and speaking at conferences, like technical conferences, but there's much more than that. We have a lot of resources from like beginners to experts at Elastic, and you just need like to know where to find all of this. So we have a discuss with a lot of questions and answers separated in solution, and you can find a lot of knowledge that there. We have blog posts, GitHub channel repository. We have the YouTube channel. This one here. We have the recording of a lot of virtual meetups. And by the way, this one is going to be here as well if you want to watch later too. We have Search Labs that it's over there. You find a lot of articles like explaining people how to better use Elastic and working with integration. So it's pretty cool too. Yeah, we give away swag in conferences and also like If you're a contributor, if you are participating in any way in our community, we like to do that to send a little gift. I have my bottle here, my elastic bottle here is really, really good. So yeah, we also get feedback from you guys to the product team, creating network opportunities. We have a contributor program too, that it's a rewarding program for the community. We usually ask people to submit call for papers, and if they're talking about Elastic at conferences, please talk to me, that I want to know, that I want to get in touch. And yeah, and well, a lot of things. And our team, it's separated basically into developer advocates and program managers. So I don't have a technical background, but we have the developer advocates, and those are the folks that are out there speaking at conferences, meetups. There are some people here from India, so maybe you guys like met Ashish. He's our developer advocate based in India, and he's incredible. So yeah, what we do, creating meaningful engagements, build excitement around Elastic, share important feedback, and we do it with our community programs, developer advocacy, community events, and we do have a digital approach too, like this one, this meetup. And resources, so as I said, the YouTube channel, you have recordings of a bunch of meetups, even if it's a meetup that was in EMEA or in the States, it doesn't matter, it will be there. We have, for the beginners, we have a beginner's crash course to Elastic Stack, which is a series of 6 videos. It's about like 50 minutes each video. And it's pretty cool for people that are beginning with Elastic. And it's also segmented by language. And yeah, so go over there, try to find like what might be useful to you. The discuss that I mentioned before, so Q&A, you have the categories there like stacks, search, observability, security, announcements, and tags too. So if you have a doubt, if you're doing something and I don't know, you don't know how to do something, go over there. Our community is very active, and I think folks are super helpful. And yeah, so don't be shy, go there, participate. That's the search labs that I mentioned. So there are a bunch of tutorials, examples for most use cases we have, or integration. So I strongly recommend you guys to check it out, because it's pretty cool. Yeah, the contributor program too. So it is a rewarding program for the community, and you have to go there, register, and then you start getting points for your activity in the community. So if you organize a meetup in your city, if you speak at a conference, or if you speak at a virtual meetup, I want to keep doing virtual meetups. So if you have something cool to share, just ping me, add me on LinkedIn, and we can talk. So you like earn points, and then in the end of each year, there are like the winners, separated by region, and then they get like pretty cool prizes. And what now? So you can subscribe to our user groups, as you see. This is all of the places where we have user groups. A lot of them are not like super active, but like we just need people wanting to make it happen. And so if you want to make it happen in your city, if you think it would be cool to have a meetup or to do something, just talk to me and we can make it happen. But yeah. Oh, and then there's an agenda that I would like to share with you, so you know. We have a meetup with Confluent in Pune. So I think Vignesh, you're from Pune, right? I heard that you said that in the I saw that you commented. So yeah, there will be a meetup there next week. Then on the 22nd, we'll have one in Beijing. Then on the 28th, we are going to have a hackathon, Forge the Future, in Singapore, which is going to be a bit of a something like before Elastic On. Elastic On is a series of events, free events, anyone can attend. If we'll be in your city, just register and go there. It's there'll be like a lot of talks and networking opportunities. It's pretty cool. So there will be this hackathon in Singapore, and one of the judges is going to be Shai Bannon. He's going to be there. So it's pretty cool for anyone that is interested, or if you know someone that would like that. I can send the link to those things after, like in the chat. And yeah, on March 3rd, we'll have a meetup for Elastic On in Singapore, and then Elastic On Singapore is going to be on March 4th. Then we'll be in Sydney, in Australia. I think Robin, you're in Sydney, right? So make sure you join our meetup and Elastic On too. We're going to have a community track at Elastic Ons. So that's pretty cool. Then at the beginning of March, we'll also be at Laracon, India, 2025. And we'll be sponsoring this one. And on March 20th, we'll be at Programmable Sydney 2025 too. We'll be sponsoring this one as well. And yeah, well, don't be a stranger. I think I talked too much already. You're probably tired of my voice. But yeah, if you want, like, I'm going to send my LinkedIn in the chat. But if you want to organize a meetup, if you're organizing a conference and you need sponsorship, just like email us, talk to us. Don't be a stranger. We are quite accessible and we want to make things happen for our community. So that's it. Thank you very much. Woof, enough, right? I'm sorry. That's it. I talk a lot, but I'll stop now because I'll have something better for you. And that is my friend Kwabena. He's a software engineer at Elastic. He's been working at Elastic for almost 4 years. And yeah, and now he's here. Like, he spoke at a meetup in Canberra in Australia. And now he'll be speaking with you on how to build engaging search experiences with Elasticsearch. So, Kwabena, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Gabi. Good to be here.
Yeah, so, well, I already thank you. Thank you very much for being here and to present to the community. I'm sure everyone is very happy to have you. And
yeah, no worries. I'm excited.
Yeah. So can I share your screen? Is all good?
Yes, my screen should be ready.
Okay. And then with that, I'll go, but I'll see you later after Kwabena presentation. I'll be back. And if you guys have questions, send them in the comments. I'm not sure how Kwabena would like to answer them, if during his presentation or after, but don't be a stranger. Like, talk about your use case. If you have a doubt, like, there's no stupid question. There is no stupid question. Just ask away, and we'll be here. And we are very interested to know how you're using Elastic. And yeah, so Kwabena, have a good presentation. I'll be here if you need me, but I don't think
Yeah, no worries.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Gabi. All right, welcome everyone. So with this presentation, I'd encourage people to just ask questions. I'll try to look at the comments, but yeah, I want it to be as interactive as possible. So yeah, so today I want to talk about how to build a search experience with Elasticsearch. So I'll give a little intro about myself. So my name is Kwabena. I've been a software engineer at Elastic. One of the things I love is to solve real-world problems using tech, which has been my primary focus my whole career. Now I've put some interesting projects here on the slides. One is to show off some of the projects I've done in the past, but it's one of the cool things is a lot of these projects that I've done, Elasticsearch has been in there in one way or another, whether it's observability, search, or security. So yeah, one of the projects that I've done was building embedded systems for delivery drones. The other thing was working with geospatial analysts and meteorologists to take photos of areas of interest for humanitarian operations. And another thing that I've also worked on is building monitoring solutions for during the pandemic for Australia. And at the moment, I'm actually part of the platform team at Elastic, and I'm part of a really awesome distributed team. And we are shaping the way we do usage-based billing in the cloud. Working with our internal revenue teams and also working with our cloud third-party cloud partners as well. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So in terms of the topic today, what I want to go through is, how to build a modern search experience really quickly using Elasticsearch. So I'll go through, how we currently interact with Elasticsearch, what the search UI library is, and how that connects with the Elasticsearch connector, and I'll do a little demo of what it is. So, okay, that was one thing I was going to ask. Actually, I was going to ask, are people on this call familiar with Elastic and Elasticsearch itself? And I can see one question here asking, what is Elastic? That's a good question. I'll maximize the slide. Okay, I can do that too. There we go. So Elasticsearch is a search engine. It's other things. I wish I had like some sort of sales pitch for this, but I'm in the developer ecosystem. But what I can tell you from my personal experience is it's a really awesome search engine. You chuck in your unstructured data in there, and you can search it at scale. So it's very versatile. One thing I did want to gauge from the community is in the comment section is if you've used Elasticsearch before, how have you used it? Are you familiar with Kwabena? Have you connected with Elasticsearch using our clients? You can drop any comments in there. That'd be awesome. But yeah, so interacting with Elasticsearch. So typically, your window to your data that you have stored in Elasticsearch, you go through using Kwabena. And Kwabena is essentially our front-end tool that you can use to look at your data that's stored in Elasticsearch. Now, within Kwabena, there's several tools that you can use. We've got the Discover tools. You can look at your data through DevTools. We also have the solutions layer as well within Kwabena. So things like the AI Playground, where you can connect with your data in Elasticsearch and also query some of the large language models out there. We've got the observability tools in Kwabena as well, and security tools. So a lot of these tools that we have, you can use that very, very easily to query your data in Elasticsearch. Now, with Kwabena, the type of user or the persona to use Kwabena is it's usually like a power user. So you can create dashboards for your end users, but typically when you're using Kwabena, you need to know more about what you're searching for, know about the sort of languages you can use to query your data. So it's, I would say, you're looking at it from a power user point of view. And obviously with your clients that you use to connect with Elasticsearch, this is where you've got your developers, building products using these programming languages to query, index, and ingest into Elasticsearch. Now, the clients that we have here, we support most of the programming languages that there are community-based ones as well that are, let's see if I can get here. So there is an exhaustive list over here. So there are some clients that are built by our community as well. that you can use to query Elasticsearch. Awesome, Robin. Yeah, it's good to hear. What sort of use case, if you don't mind sharing, what sort of use case are you using it for, Elasticsearch service? Okay, so now I've talked about how you can interact with your data once it's in Elasticsearch, through Kwabena using your developer clients. What I wanted to discuss today was another way to interact with your data, which is I guess more suitable for consumers of your data who don't need to have technical knowledge about how to actually query. So essentially, a lot of end users are very used to having a search bar and then typing in something and getting the data they want. So the Search UI library that we have in Elasticsearch is really awesome at doing that. It all comes out of the box. There's very little configurations, and it's what I want to go through today. Okay, so what is Search UI with Elasticsearch? So the Search UI is essentially just a JavaScript library. It provides you with all the tools that you need to spin up a very quick search implementation, bringing in all the features that you'd expect from a search experience. So you don't have to build all these boilerplate solutions yourself. It's a library that's maintained by Elastic, and yeah, we've got our documentation for that. Now, the features of the Search UI library, it's quick, it's very flexible. Like I mentioned, you essentially, import the packages that we already have into your existing, front-end code base, and then you can use it, customize it the way you want to fulfill the need, your search experience need. One other cool thing that it provides out of the box is some of the more challenging aspects of creating a search experience. So things like paging, filtering, and it even gives you the ability to have a dynamic URL. So as you have a certain search experience page, it will automatically give you the URL of that page that you're looking at with your search. This will all make a little bit more sense once I do the demo. So what is the cluster size? Ganesh asks. So the Search UI that I'm talking about, it isn't necessarily about the cluster. It's more about how you actually query the data that's in your cluster. So you can have as large a cluster size as you want, but this is just giving you the front end framework to query your data without going through Kwabena or using the developer SDK clients. Okay, so let's jump into a quick demo. Yes, it's very much customizable. So okay, let's start here. So I am currently in Kwabena. So Kwabena is like I mentioned, it's our front end tool that gives you the window into the data you have stored in Elasticsearch. And at the moment, what you can see here is I've got 4 documents that I've indexed into Elasticsearch. So the data over here is about movies. So we've got documents that include the title of the movies, the plot of the movie. So these two would be strings. The actors as a list, the genre, and so many more. So all this data is currently in Elasticsearch, and the way you typically query your data is to come into here and search up the data you want. So for example, if I wanted to search for something that's crime related, I'd get the first document here using this search bar. Now we can essentially get this similar experience, building our own custom user interface. And so this is where the search UI comes in. So let me give you a snippet of that. So this is what that is. So over here I have, so this is on the left here is a template of how you can use our search UI library. I'll go through how it actually works here. So I'm going to assume a few of you are familiar with well, not a few of you, everyone should have at least experience searching in a search box. And this is experience that end users are typically familiar with. So the idea is you've got this search UI library that you can use to build this search UI without the end user needing to know how to structure their query and everything like that. That's all built in by the developer, and you give you a nice simple user interface to query data. So we've got the search box here. So before, I think I searched for crime. So if I were to do the same thing here, you can start to see that, one, we are starting to make some requests to Elasticsearch, and we're also getting some suggestions here as well. So that's something that comes, straight from the search UI library. It comes free. You don't need to build all these by yourself. So this is the sort of experience that end users are used to. You go into your search bar and you're having this sort of nice experience. So when I click on that, I'm able to get a few more details about it. So it's pulled up a movie called The Godfather. It's pulled out some information about it, and then you've got some faceting on the left-hand side here that you can use to filter out information that you want. So all this comes out of that search UI library that I was talking about, so you don't need to build any of this from scratch. Now, I think someone mentioned that is it customizable? So the screen that you have here, you are able to build on top of the library that's already given, and customize it as much as you want to meet your end user goal. So let me jump into some of the comments here. What types of searches can you do? And how can we have this page? Okay, yeah, no worries. So at the moment, I'm just doing simple text searches. And essentially all it's doing is passing on. So that's something that I can show here. So let me clear that. So let's do another movie. So let's do an action movie. So as I started typing, we were actually making some requests to Elasticsearch to help with the suggestions. And if I were to hit that, we can have a look at some of the payload here as well. So if you're familiar with the Elasticsearch query language, this is essentially what it's doing. It's making a request. Let me zoom in here a little bit. It's making a query request to Elasticsearch with the data that you're typing up in here. Now, I might not go through this whole thing because it can be a bit verbose, but yeah, if you're familiar with the Elasticsearch query language, that's essentially what it's making. And I can imagine if you're asking, what sort of search you can do, essentially, all the search capabilities that we have within Elasticsearch, you can do over here as well. So you can target your keyword searches, you can target your semantic searches, depending on how you've configured your backend, so your cluster itself. So in terms of I think someone asked, how did I actually build this page? So, usually when you're building a front-end application, you can use vanilla JavaScript, kind of like what we have here. You can use your, well, actually, this is using the React framework as well. And in terms of how you use the search UI that we already have, we performing some imports at the start. And this is something that I wanted to show, go through really quickly. So over here, we are importing the Elasticsearch API connector. So there's a package that we've installed in our React application here. There's a bunch of other UI components that we get in from the React Search UI library as well. Let's zoom in a bit. And then over here, this is where some of the magic happens. So, obviously you do not want to do this in production. I'm giving you the host and credentials here. But for demo purposes, this is how you would actually connect to your cluster once your cluster's running up. It's as simple as giving it, where your cluster is, the index that you'll be querying, and the authentication methods to it. And then in terms of configuring, what actually happens once you've got your data in Elasticsearch, how do you want your search experience to behave like? There's a bunch of configuration parameters you can put in. So, for example, when we're looking at this out here. So, for example, in here, when I'm doing a search, I want to put more weight on the title, and so this is where that's been put in. And then there are other fields in my document that I can also prioritize as part of the search fields. In terms of what we get back from Elasticsearch, so for example, the results fields, we can tell it, what do we actually want to get back? And over here, we've said, once we make the query, we want to get back the title, we want to get back the plot. And so, if you've queried Elasticsearch before, these sort of return values will be quite familiar as well. And yeah, that's just a bunch of configurations that you can make for your search experience, including auto-complete queries, which fields to have suggestions for. Yeah, it's quite exhaustive. And so with this config, you can then chuck that into your search driver, and then so all these components here come out of the box, so you don't need to build all these by yourself. You can definitely customize them as well. And yeah, it's quite if I'm not sure how many of you have built like a search experience before, but there's a lot that goes into it. And here, this is where you get it essentially out of the box. I'm just gonna have a look at the comments here for a sec. Can you sort by fields sorting? Yeah, absolutely. So even in this particular, yeah, so you can set up sorting. I don't think I have it here in this demo, but you can absolutely search. Let me give you an example. So for example, in this facets here, I can, you know, look at movies just from, you know, Michelle Yao over here. So absolutely, can this be used in production? So the demo that I'm showing you, absolutely not. You should always be proxying your requests. So essentially, you do not want to be, you know, showing your requests back to Elasticsearch, you know, through the browser. You'd want to proxy that, and I'll show you an example of how that's done. But can you use it in production? I believe the search URL library is in tech preview at the moment. So it is up to you, you know, your developers to determine, you know, what features are in the library. But yeah, it's like from how I use it personally. Yes, I use it in production for my personal projects. And can I return relationships in a graphical display, kind of like geospatial? Yes, absolutely. Even in report, yes. So yes, in Kwabena there is a mapping feature. We have a whole geospatial capabilities there, where, you know, you've got your tiles, your map layers, and you can layer on your geopoint data. So if your data has, you know, geolocation data in there, absolutely you can visualize it there. And then return connections and geolocation in a graphic. Let me think about that for a second. If you had a name entered in search and add relations. Oh, right. So yes, so I actually have that. If I were to show you something that I was going to show, an application that I'm actually building. So I'm building an application for my community here in Canberra, and it uses Elasticsearch in the background. And one of the things that we have is geospatial features, you know, when we do the search. So, you know, if I want to be able, as a user, I want to be able to return, you know, a number of beauty businesses that are around me. So I need to be able to pass in my geo information as a consumer, and then through the query, you know, filters out the locations, you know, based on, filters out the data that I want based on my location. So yeah, you can absolutely do that, and I have that in this. So for example, here in this application that I've been building in my spare time, if I were to put in, you know, if I want to find, you know, who does cakes in my area, one of the first things it does is, let's look at the payload. It's taking in some lat lawns from my well, this is not my current location. This is the location of Canberra. I think if you go to these coordinates, it will be like Parliament House or something like that. But essentially, you pass in the location as part of the request payload, and then that's used in the back end to do some filtering. So it can do that. What effect the weight field has on the results? Yes, I could do this feature. Okay, so let's go. I love these questions. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Okay, so let's go back to this library we're talking about, which is powering this page. And what else did I want to mention? So the URLs. So as you can see here, these URLs are being built as I'm doing some filtering and searches and stuff like that. So for example, if I were to, type in Michelle over here, do a search. As you can see in the URL, that's been updated. And this is something that, you can easily share with someone else. Depending on what your use case is, you can share that URL and bang. So you do not need to build all these sort of search, experiences by yourself. I'll get back. I think I'll get back to the question about weighting, the weights, because that's a whole nother field. Please can you tell me what is the name of this feature? So if I'm going to imagine you talking about the, how I'm getting this sort of search user interface. So this is using our search UI. So here's a link. Where are we? Search UI. Here we go. So I think we can share this after this call as well. But essentially, this will give you a good idea of how to, build a template, see, what you can do with it. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. Okay, so let me wrap up here. So, so one thing I did want to show you was, indexing new data into Elasticsearch and then seeing how that appears here in our search interface. So let's do that really quickly. So we're going to go to DevTools. So on the right, I'm in Kwabena. So this is where usually your power users live. And I'm going to go into DevTools. Let's clear that. So DevTools allows you to, query your data in Elasticsearch. So this is my index that I'm looking at. And I can do a search and return all the documents that I have indexed. So what I want to do is add in a new document. So I'm just going to copy one of these. Let's grab one of these documents. So imagine I have put in...
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Siri's listening to me. All right. So let's add in a new movie to our list and then see it show up here. So let's create so let me just call this Spider-Man because I watched that recently, and let's just assume Spider-Man had these properties here. So let's index that, and then when I come in here, it's right. I think I set it that it would only make a request to Elasticsearch after 3 characters. So yeah, there we go. And now we've got Spider-Man. Well, actually, that's going to take us somewhere else. It takes me to Wiki. Let's go back here. Yeah, there we go. So whatever I just index here, shows up here. Because it's essentially just making a request. Fella Kwabena, awesome. Yeah, let's definitely connect. Okay, so yeah, that's just what I wanted to show. And in terms of one thing I did want to show was how to actually proxy your request. So at the moment your front end is making a direct request to Elasticsearch in a production environment. Obviously, you don't want that. You don't want to be showing the details about what's going on behind the scenes, with your API keys and that sort of thing. You don't want to be showing that to your users. So depending on which front-end framework you use. So I mentioned that I've been working on this side project, and what I'm doing, so this is based on Next.js, and what I'm doing is actually proxying my requests. So from the front end, it's just going to make a request to API search. But in the back end, what's happening is it's passing the payload to my API route here. So this is very specific to Next.js, but this can be done with other frameworks as well. And then what's happening is my request is being processed by the backend, and then doing the requests in the backend, and then sending a response back to the front end. So what that looks like is, so let's go back here. Like I mentioned, I'm search for home. So in this search request, as you can see here, we are only we're making requests to an endpoint called API search instead of the underscore search. So that's going to proxy the request to the backend, and then I'm going to get a response. So with the responses as well, I can always filter that out as well. What comes back from the backend. So yeah. Oh, and one other thing. So last thing was pagination. So yeah, if you've ever done one, by yourself, it's not one of the easiest things to implement. This all comes out of the box. So I can go through here, and what happens is it's actually making a request saying, okay, we are on page 2. This is how many results I want. And so all this is, so this UI is something that I've customized for my use case. So that shows you how flexible the UI library is. Cool. I think I can end here. That's essentially just what I wanted to share with you all. Thank you, and thank you for all the questions.
Hi, I'm back. Thank you very much, Kwabena. So many questions. People were like all over the place asking. That's great.
Yeah. I still need to get back to someone about the weightings, the weights. I'll drop a comment.
This one, John, I think. Joe.
I believe so. Yes, Joe. Yeah.
Do you want to do it now? You still have 3 minutes.
I still have 3 minutes. I'll need some time to give the answer.
Oh, yeah. Of course. No pressure. See? Yeah, no pressure. I'm like being super bossy here. You have 3 minutes. No, but well, thank you very much. It was very helpful. I bet like for how many questions we got, I think people enjoyed a lot. It was very helpful. And it's really nice that there are folks from everywhere. Like there's someone from Morocco, there's someone from Germany. So yeah, all over the place, which is pretty cool. I don't know if you still be there for Adrian's presentation, Kwabena, because then in the end I can invite you to stage so we can say goodbye, or I don't know if you're going to be here.
Yeah, I'll be here. Yeah, I'll be here. I want to hear about Adrian's presentation.
Yeah, we all do. All right, so thank you very much, and I'll see you later.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so now I'm very happy to introduce Adrian Cole. He's this incredible person before being an engineer, and he's based in Singapore. He joined Elastic last year, right, Adrian?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, last year, but it seems like he's been at Elastic for, I don't know, longer than I do, because he's been so involved in the community and in like creating content and being like helpful to anyone. Like people just ask him a lot of things and he's like, okay, wait. But super thoughtful to the community. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to do this virtual meetup with you, because like you've been presenting at conferences and meetup, but I'm never there to watch. I always hear like feedback and people like, oh, Adrian, and I'm like, come on, I don't get to watch that. That's not fair. So finally, it's my turn to watch too, and I'll be here. If you feel free to share your screen, so then you can start your presentation. And to everybody who's watching now, again, Adrian, it's free to decide on how he wants to answer questions, if he wants to do as he goes or at the end of his presentation. But don't be shy, comment, ask questions. These incredible people, before being brilliant engineers, they are like very generous people. So they are here, like, they're kind, and they're here to share their knowledge. That's why they're here. And so yeah, don't be shy, ask away and talk to him. I'm gonna share your LinkedIn too, Adrian. So yeah, I'm not seeing your screen. Can you?
Oh, I didn't want to cut off your face.
No, come on, just do it. People are
All right,
tired
keep
of my
going.
face. All right.
Okay, we good?
Yep.
Okay, let's try this out.
All right. Well, I'll be here if you need me. Just yell my name, scream my name, Gabi, and I'll be here. So
All right.
have a good presentation, and everybody watching, enjoy it.
Cool.
Bye bye.
I'll enjoy too. So yeah, trivia. I actually first time I connected to Elasticsearch was in 2010, when it was this tiny project from Shy, just a very interesting small group, and maintained connection for a long time. But I think a lot of the folks here on the comments have had a lot of deep practice. So I'm glad people are able to share their stories, and I hope you continue to do that here and also any subsequent things. This particular presentation is not so much about Elasticsearch itself, but many of you know, like Elasticstack has a lot of things inside of it. APM is one of those things, and that's the context that I came to this with, working in the OpenTelemetry side of things. And we're doing more work in generative AI, which I'll get into later. And I figured this was a kind of a neat programming perspective about some of the work that we do. And hopefully it has some things for non-coders as well, but you can let me know how it goes. So firstly, I'm Adrian, and yeah, while I'm doing a presentation on generative AI, first off, it's fairly new to most of us, and for me, it's even more so. So yeah, you may have some more to share than I have, and feel free to contribute through comments. I've only been doing this as a majority of my time for less than 9 months. But I do kind of like dig into things. So I hope I found some ways to bring some value here. I've done a lot of open source work. I've done a lot of Go programming, but also a lot of Java before that. I used to lead the Zipkin project, and I've done generally a lot of portability things. And I think that AI is a new space for this whole like portability topic. I will talk a little bit about that, but let's get into the agenda. So what we'll do for the next 40 minutes, if I am on time, is go through like OpenAI, because that's the most common way people enter this space, or ChatGPT directly, and then look at how different entry points into this sort of AI space are for folks, and then transition into like Python tests. Even though I spent a lot of time in other languages, one thing that's certainly the case in generative AI, and it's because of its machine learning background, a lot of things end up in the Python programming language. So you'll see a lot of Python in SDKs and things. And then we'll talk about some funny words like Olama then I'll show you exactly how we've entered this space, like tech as engineers in software on my team, and then some hints about where to go next for some more interesting stuff that I don't have time to cover. So for some of you, this can be a repeat, but you know, because we're a mixed crowd, there's no like prerequisites. I think it's important to level set what is this all about. So when we talk about generative AI or Gen AI, which is abbreviated, the generative word means that you're making something new based on something you know. So it's in that way it's a causal. It's going one direction to the other. So it's taking knowledge it's seen and trying to predict something. In some ways, you could think it feels like old school, like you know, autocomplete, but obviously it's much more smart than that. When people say model, usually they mean language models, things that can understand what you type in different languages. Large is you know, because of the size of these things, often they're on hosting providers. So it's more common with the powerful laptops and things we have now that you can actually run a lot of this stuff on your host. OpenAI is a powerful organization to talk about because they basically own a lot of the news, except for maybe last week, which we can chat about in the comments with DeepSeek and all that. But it's both an organization and a cloud platform. So the OpenAI organization has a partnership with Microsoft, and that's one of the reasons why you can see like Azure OpenAI service. And its primary like model family is GPT, and that's why you will see the app ChatGPT, because that's basically the brain, or the AI brain, as I tell my wife, that's behind their front end, which is ChatGPT. So in the world of generative AI, when people say front end, they usually mean like some sort of an application. It's often a web front end, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a web app. It could be a rich app or any other kind of thing that's using a model. And ChatGPT is just the most famous example of that. So if you were to just open up ChatGPT now, which you can do logged out if you want, you can throw in some question, esoteric as you like, and maybe it's going to give you an answer to that. And so this is a form of natural language processing. So if you hear this like NLP thing, that's basically meaning that you're not structuring this into SQL or something like that. This is just like how you would write. And then it's not limited to the English language. Most of these things, they can understand multiple languages. So in this case, if I were to ask you know, a esoteric geography question, it would be able to answer that if the geography was a part of the data that it was trained on. And so sometimes people think that, oh, it was trained for geography. Well, it's not necessarily the case, because the reason why these things are so helpful is that they are versatile. They have a lot of types of knowledge that they have seen, usually from web data. And so just because it can answer a question on geography does not mean it was like specifically tuned to do that. So the flip side of it is that we're quite thankful to be able to ask all sorts of things, and we do, and find all the interesting things it can answer, or sometimes refuse to answer. Another concept for Gen AI, again, for folks who already know this, apologies. But the whole idea of context window. And if you think of it like this, any sort of like event replay system is going to have like a log, and then it will be able to replay the messages in that log back to ideally achieve you know, the same result. The only difference is that in the case of LLM, there's not really a lot of predictability in what's going to come next. I'll get to that later. But one thing that's very important to know about LLMs is that they're by themselves, they're stateless. So if you were to make a request and say like which ocean contains Bouvet Island, and it gives you a response, if you want to make a follow-up to that, what's happening behind the scenes is it's going to actually replay the previous question and the previous answer, and then your next question. And all of that's in the context window. So that's how it appears like there's a session, but that's actually in most systems that, well, maybe most ones that you can see on like a programming SDK. It's just replaying those things one by one, and so it gives the appearance of a session. There are some new technologies about like memory services and things, but generally speaking, the LLMs themselves are stateless. So if you ask it, like, you know, are you learning from what I'm writing right now? It may say yes, but it's probably lying. And I'll get to hallucinations later. In like say 2023, 2024, maybe some of it, the amount of tokens, like the amount of data that's sent back and forth, was a pretty big, or was a bigger deal than it is today, because the cost of a lot of these models was higher than it is today. But there's been a bit of a price war, and you can get like 1 million tokens for like not much or even free, depending on what provider you're using. Where it gets into the case where like counting tokens might count more is when people are doing things like, you know, making movie trailers or like putting your entire code base into, or your entire Jira into context. But I would say that in the past, especially when I started, there was a lot more focus about like tokens, like, am I spending too much money? Probably, unless you're using something like reasoning, which is relatively expensive, it's probably not that much of a cost. And if you look at a lot of apps, and I mean, Elastic has its own inference service for doing things, and it has a playground inside. Basically, all of the model providers have some sort of a playground feature where either they will give you a chat window or code examples or both. And so they will let you like flip and see what something looks like in multiple languages. In case Python's not your thing, you could use curl or something else like that. And in the case of OpenAI, it is like I said earlier, it's a company, it's a platform, and that platform has an API. And so if you want to like have something difficult to say, you can say OpenAI. Open API, so Swagger, right? So there's a API definition of the REST API that's used underneath of these tools, and so that's how most of the time people will integrate products. Either they use the SDK, or they'll write the raw HTTP requests to do these things. And so in that case, you can see like this messages thing here, where basically there's a list that you can replay manually through code if you wanted to. There's a lot of parameters here. I'm not going to get into that. You can kind of use ChatGPT and ask those questions. So some key things when you're programming are that, you know, like most programming SDKs, there are some handy bits inside of how things initialize, so it's not so cluttery. So OpenAI has some canonical environment variables, like you could imagine for like API key or base URL or other things like that. And so these, regardless of language, they're pretty good at it, where most of them are reading coherent variables. And in fact, if you want some trivia, Stainless is the company that generates their SDK, and they do that in multiple languages. So if you like look at the code repos, you'll notice that they're actually produced by the Stainless generator, which can be something that other companies can use to make SDKs, and that's kind of interesting. The part that are required is the content. There's not really a good default model because you could be doing different things, but many times people will use the GPT model because that's the kind of like flagship. And there are multiple variants of it, and they have different costs, and you can look it up in the table just like an Amazon EC2 instance. Like there's different rates for these type of things. And then, of course, you have to pass a message if you want to get the service to complete the next one. But you don't have to put in all these other parameters that can control like how the response is produced. The only one I'll talk about is temperature. So temperature is effectively like kind of a creativity range. And so if you're doing something that you want less creative, like more predictable results, then you would put like temperature 0. And then you would put like something above 0 if you want like something like creative writing or you know, music like we heard in the beginning of this virtual meetup. So as you now have a library, you picked it up, you make like a small Python program. You can make one to basically do the same thing as what I had showed in the ChatGPT app. We're asking like one question and returning a single response. And this is kind of how it would look in Python. And the main thing here is that there's different roles. So if you see this here, role is user. So the assistant is AI. So when it responds, it's responding as a role of the AI. There are other roles, like the most common one you will find used is a role called system. And system basically sets the context of like everything to follow. So say you were making like a log analysis bot. Maybe you would create a system role with a message saying, you are a log analysis bot. Your job is to like identify the web traffic from this log file. So when a user enters text, assume it's an Nginx log or something like that. And then if you do have, in this case, one of the points I showed here is that if you have defined a separate function for your chat, then you can test it. That's just normal test practice. And if you had an integration test, you could put exactly the message that I mentioned, and then you could print out what that reply is. And that, yeah, like it's not a big amount of money to do something like this. Now, you could argue, is this really an integration test if all it's doing is printing out the response? I'm making it overly simple, and I will show you like what a real instrument test is, but I hope this is maybe a little bit easier to read for non-coders. The main thing is like it is actually giving you a reply, and you can look at the console. And the one question is, why can't you test for an exact response? Well, we don't know what it's going to say. It's not entirely predictable. So these are not deterministic systems. So given the same input, you're not going to get the same output. Now, there are research to try to make them more deterministic, but even if you set temperature to 0, like Spock mode, then you're still going to have some fairly random responses. So you could do something fairly cheap and just look to see if the word Atlantic's in there, to kind of like, test that's there. There are other approaches for like some semantic similarity, but basically it's going to be difficult to predict precisely what will be sent back to you. And for that reason, programmers will probably want to go for this like replay approach. So many web services, including OpenAI and many others, like say you have an Amazon feature that you're using, you can record the request, and that way your unit test can work with pre-canned requests and responses instead of it hitting a live service. And I'm on the plane a lot. I don't have good Wi-Fi. I also like this because I prefer things to not. Well, first off, I don't like to have to authenticate things. And secondly, I like things to run fast instead of like potential lags, and ideally, even if I'm on airplane mode. So there are libraries, particularly in Python, and it's also been ported to other languages. But since Python's like a very common language, VCR is a cute name for recording the request and response, and having a easy-to-use system to replay those. So you could actually make 2 different copies of the test, one to be live, like integration and and one to just like use pre-canned things. So in that case, you could be like exact match on the response, because it's really just using a real but faked out interaction with OpenAI's platform. It will just proxy the request behind the scenes and make sure it's always the same response. But when you do that, you can actually find that the prompt, like in this case, the prompt is a message. When people say prompt, usually they're talking about what is sent as a message. And if I say, like, what ocean contains Bouvet Island, the thing could be quite chatty. And for me, as a kind of like quite detail-oriented programmer, I don't like things that have to wrap. So I might just change my question so that it's shorter. And in fact, in most of my examples, I would say like answer in up to 3 words, what is the name? Because even when you say what is the name, it will sometimes give you a sentence back. And this is just like a game to play. And obviously, this is not a terribly important island for most people. I'm just using this as an example. You could put your own sort of logic in here, and it would be a similar type of very varied response pattern. And so the one problem is we have a chicken egg concern. So how do you actually record these requests? It's fine when there's no authentication. So this is a kind of like a Python programming language thing. If this like goes through because you're not into that, just as I was told at the GopherCon a week ago, I guess, just let it wash through. But you do have to pass these things, but you don't want them logged, right? So if you are writing the unit test, they're going to be checked in the version control, right? So you don't want to have your API key end up being like accidentally leaked. So on one hand, you want to be able to record requests in case you change this prompt, and then somehow like you need a new response from the service. So you do need to pass a real key somehow, but you also want to fake it back out. So you want to replace it when it's being recorded with a token instead. So if you want to do that, like many times these tokens are converted back to like bearer tokens. And so you don't want to like check in something and like maybe that token is valid for an hour, and if you check into to your repository, even though it looks obfuscated, it's still a problem. So you have to be careful with these BCR recordings. And so there's basically some config here, and you don't have to like memorize any of this. I'll give links to how this is working. And personally, I think there should be like templatized, like, so you just say, I want the scrub thing, like just look for all the stuff, but it is not in the library for some reason. And so in my opinion, just like go through anything that's potentially like, it's not PII per se, but like, sensitive bits, and scrub them all out. So there are ways to do that. Okay, so after you've got these requests, you've converted the service into an offline system, which makes it basically a unit test. There are people who have different opinions of what a unit test are, but effectively, if you're even taking like the latency, like if it takes like a millisecond, it's going to take less than a millisecond to run these tests, at least one of them. So they're going to be quite fast. You only need the real credentials when you change something. So if you change your prompt to something else, then it's going to notice it's a drift there, and it's going to ask to re-record it. Integration tests, obviously, if you're hitting a real OpenAI service, you're going to need to have those credentials somewhere. And so some people in their dev process may just not want to allow that to happen. It's not necessarily they're worried about like people consuming 20 cents of their tokens, but there's obviously other reasons that you could imagine for that, particularly abuse. And I mean, and this is more about test practice, but like, in my opinion, skip tests are bad, but it's worse than having none. So at least they will be linted, or in a compiled language, they'll be compiled. So like, these are just opinions that I have on that. Now, let's get back to this thing. Like, before, I kind of teased about this whole like DeepSeek R1 news that even my like aunt and uncle were asking me about, because I went to Chinese New Year and they're like, oh, DeepSeek. So it's not just OpenAI out there. OpenAI is the most well-known, and it's hosted in multiple places, including Azure, but it's certainly not the only one out there. So Meta, who owns Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., they have their own model called Llama. So it's a play on LLM, right? And then that can be run by them, or on this site called Hugging Face. You can find it there. It can be run on your own laptop, like I do all the time. It's also hosted on like Amazon and other places. So there are like what you call like open licensed, or like it's kind of a squishy term what open means for these things, but basically they're freely downloadable. Some of them are open, or more open than others. But there are many of these models out there. I tend to use this model from Alibaba, which is a Chinese company called Qwen. But the most popular one discussed lately is another Chinese one called DeepSeek. This is not to advocate for these models. There's plenty of reasons that people may want to use something or not use something. The main point here is that there's multiple ones. They do different things. And so even if you only hear about OpenAI, there's a big ecosystem out there, and there are many choices. For coding, for example, for like automatic things, many people use like a company called Anthropic's models. And in Elastic's products, so many of you know we have like an observability assistant, which can like do cool things for you. That one is an LLM app itself, and that tends to use Claude, I think, for its model choice from Anthropic. So this is just the README, so I won't burden you with me reading that to you. But basically, like, one interesting thing about Qwen is that it supports, actually I think the language count is above 29 now. So it can do like all sorts of translation stuff for you, which is pretty cool. And they do have different variants of it. They have a reasoning version, they have a coding version, they have one that's vision, so it means that it can like identify like a screenshot what's in there. Very, very interesting stuff. And that's not unique to the Qwen series, but it's just that it happens to be there in their Apache license, so that's nice. And if you have a model like this, you could use a tool to run it, like on your laptop. The one that I use is called Ollama, and that the backend probably doesn't matter for most people, but like it's a very highly used backend called Llama CPP. Like many things use this, so it's like leveraging that technology, but giving a very Docker experience to it. And you can just do a one-shot command. You can run all these things, including the new DeepSeek thing that people talk about. So you can just click on there, and it's a super easy entry to ecosystem if people are like slightly on the dev side. And the reason a lot of this stuff works is because OpenAI's API is a de facto standard. So by changing the URL to like Ollama's port, you can reuse the SDK, which is pretty cool. And that's the same case for like xAI's Grok uses the same API as OpenAI, so does DeepSeek, so do many of these things. So you get a lot of leverage. So once you learn like the OpenAI, if you're a programmer or if you manage teams who program, the OpenAI SDK does not lock you into OpenAI's platform. Generally speaking, it's pretty versatile. It doesn't intentionally break other platforms. So people just use it, not because it's like de jure standard, but because it's de facto. So in this case, it's just like, I need to change the model because this GPT thing is only licensed for OpenAI platform and Microsoft, so you can't actually use that unless you're using their platforms. So if I want to use a different thing, I do have to choose a different model, one that I have access to. So if I'm using Ollama, I can do Ollama pool on this thing, and then that would work. So that means my tests have to at least parameterize the name of the model, even if all the other parameters are like implicit from ENV variables that OpenAI understands. There is no OpenAI variable for model name. And then, yeah, so you can just kind of plug that in, and then you can hit a local service instead of OpenAI directly, or you can hit both of them and if you're doing like some portability stuff. And yeah, so there's a question about LangChain, which is important question. And so that one, I'll just I'll pop a link in when we finish this deck. We have a thing called chatbot-rag-app, and Elasticsearch Labs is how to find it. And I've actually just recently added, with my team, we've added logging metrics and tracing to that thing with OpenTelemetry, which is pretty cool. What is LangChain anyway? So LangChain is like a framework to help connect the dots. So for example, these models have limitations to the knowledge that they know. So you may have some knowledge that you have stored in Elasticsearch via vector DB, which is just like a type of data format for these LLMs, which is based on well, numerical vectors. And LangChain is like an orchestration process to do that. And also it has integration connectors to other things like GitHub or whatever else you might want to connect it to. So it's a very good question. And the reason I haven't introduced LangChain, that was the other part of the question. Why didn't I do that? Because it's 40 minutes. Basically, one thing that I want to get into here is that like LLMs have this concept of hallucinations, and so sometimes they will come up with some pretty batty ideas. So like make up things. Like I literally got this response once. It said that this island of penguins is actually not in the Atlantic Ocean; it's in the ocean of icebergs, and so they failed the test. And so a lot of things here, this concept of hallucination is that statistical correlation and basically the way these things are made is they're made to try to produce an answer. And they may invent things to fill the gaps that they may have. And sometimes you can just use a larger model, like 0.5 billion parameters to move to 14 billion. And usually this can reduce hallucinations if you have a good model to begin with. But there's not a perfect way out of this. It's just that hallucination happens even on the very best models. There's still a percentage, like above 1% of hallucination risk, where it will just give you some crazy stuff back. And for test practice, like oftentimes there is the easiest way is just retry 5 times. So it doesn't mean it's going to run 5 times. It just means that it can go up to that. And for cheap requests, you don't need to do anything on here. So for me, like usually this is more about practice. It doesn't really have to do about OpenAI. But like I always separate my unit and integration tests. Usually integration tests tend to take a bit of time. And then if you're nervous, especially if you're working with external contributors, if your code via direct access to OpenAI, or if you're doing something like you're running through LangChain, which itself uses OpenAI underneath of it, then you could still get some likelihood of running against a fake platform like Ollama instead, but you may have some hallucination risk. And it's not, in that case, as good of an integration test as running against the real service, but it kind of depends on what type of balance you're looking for. If you are running a local model, I would say like always pool the model first. The reason is that some of these things are pretty big. They can be many gigabytes in size. And so just for visibility of that and caching, it's better to do that. Similar, just think of it as like a big Docker image. And then always write a good contributing file or put it in your README. That way people will be able to like understand how to configure these things, and they don't have to know the programming aspect. So like how to change the variables to re-record requests if you're doing the VCR stuff. So now I'm going to take a little bit of time to the example. In this example, I'm going to use Elastic's distribution of OpenTelemetry. And for those who maybe don't know, this is basically the thing that collects the stats that you can end up seeing in Kwabena in APM, like the service topology or traces view, or even in the log explorer. And so here we go. So in this case, Elastic's distribution of OpenTelemetry is Apache licensed open source, so it's not like business license or anything. So all this code is like free in the most normal way. And in this case, I have it checked out in my development ID here. So here, like, I'll just go to the tests. So in this case, what we're doing in OpenAI is we have a lot of different use cases. So someone Robin had asked about LangChain. So we actually made a lot of tests to make sure that our chatbot, Frag apps, all their use cases for LangChain, including streaming, so you can do like responsive apps, all of those things are actually covered. So you can actually see we've recorded things for all sorts of stuff, and including tools, which is how Kwabena assistants work. So we when you're configuring like a connector, an AI connector, some of these knowledge feeds are actually invoked by tool calls, which is too much for me to cover in depth now, but basically it's there. And so in a real test here is we are actually doing some, this is raw, so this is not like programming a normal person would do, but we have some tests that are marked for integration, and then they will look to see like, okay, well, I have a tool for getting the delivery dates, and I want you to play these messages like your helpful customer support assistant, assist them. Hey, can you give me the delivery date? Okay, sure. What's your order ID? I think the order ID is 12345. So an LLM should be smart enough to say, okay, well, there's a relationship between these requests. That means that I should call the get delivery date service and look for that order ID. So this test goal is just to verify that happens. I'm not going to force you to read all this stuff. But then if we run that test, then it will take time, like 2.5 seconds here, because it's this integration test is running against actual OpenAI. Now, Ollama, I mentioned to you, is a service. So Ollama is like a Docker, so you need to start it up. So Ollama serve is the command to start it, and then that ends up listing on its default ports. And I could actually change this same test and run it instead of OpenAI. And I'm not going to show you my key. I can point it at Ollama environment instead. And what does Ollama environment look like? So Ollama's environment looks like this. So it's redirecting the base URL. This is just a normal environment variable. And this is how like all the other services work. And then it fakes out the key. And then we have some variables to control like which model we're using for chat, what model we're using for embeddings. And embeddings is not something I can cover here, but it's basically how VectorDB stuff works. So because we are a VectorDB company, we have tests around that. So anyway, now I run the test, and well, it took a quicker amount of time, but then it failed. Why did it fail? By the way, So it should have failed because the content was slightly different. And this time, here. So the Olama service is just a laptop service, and our tests are looking that the real OpenAI service has this concept of service tiers, like a normal enterprise concept. But this type of thing basically gave the same result, but as expected, but it doesn't have this property. And so that's kind of like one of the things you can run into if you try to swap out platforms. Maybe some of them don't have the same fields, and you might need to make some glue around that. It's just a quick example. And then back to the slideshow. So what's next? Probably should have put the line change, sorry. But what's next for this? I did talk about pretty low level unit and integration tests. It's just stuff that we're doing. I felt like it's important to share, like the mechanics. It's basically just a web service at the end of the day. But we didn't actually get into how you really do a good job testing for semantic responses, like that the response makes any sense at all. The reason is that's a fairly big space. It came out of ML, or machine learning evaluations, model evaluations, and that's carried through to LLM. And so there's a couple of friends of mine who work every day in this space that you can like look them up. These slides will be available. Otherwise, I work with them in OpenTelemetry, and they do a lot of posts on this stuff. And then maybe if you're interested, you can ask for a presentation on like sensible responses, and maybe I'll make one. So this is it. I guess I'm a minute late. So it's just a recap here, and I'll leave this slide up, and then I'll look to comments for any questions, or if you want to ask me random stuff, you can too.
I'm muted. Sorry. Thank you very much, Adrian. So yeah, well, 1 minute is fine. You're allowed. Okay, I'll let you be late this time. Don't get used to that. No, I'm joking. So yeah, does anyone have any questions, any comments? Robin or anyone else? Well, I share a lot of useful links to all of you in the comments. So yeah, so we have like some links to some of our meetups. There are like some resources for research labs with working with integrations. So a lot of them, a lot of useful stuff over there. So make sure you check. In case there's something interesting for you. I think like there's no questions at this time, but I also shared the LinkedIn of both Adrian and Kwabena, so they were fine with you guys adding them there and talking a little bit. And yeah, so Adrian, I'll remove your screen. Do you want to say anything else with the screen on or no?
No, that's about it, I think.
Okay, so I'll just add Kwabena too here, so we can all say goodbye, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and yeah. So do you guys have last words?
Yeah,
Yes, I would say like, haha, we did it. Perfect.
Do it, Adrian. Alphabetical order. Adrian, you
Okay,
first.
so I mean, one thing I would just say is like, don't forget about Elasticon. So that's something that's all around the world, and if it's near to you, you can make it, give it a try.
So yeah, actually there are people are starting to comment how to integrate embeddings, and actually, yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
Okay, and by the way, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem writing into the comments, so I was not able to put in the Elasticsearch Labs thingy. I'll do a quick share to show you what embeddings means, I'll take 5 minutes, I guess, since it asked about it, and that's of course is core to us at Elastic anyway. So I wasn't prepared to. Can you see my screen? Okay. So I wasn't prepared to like actually run the demo of this right now, but I will give it a quick walkthrough. So chatbot rec app. Now this is not a new example. So the team in Elasticsearch Labs, which is the blog, which is a nice one to follow. So we have two things. We have observability labs, which is more observability centric. We have Elasticsearch Lab, which is Elastic-centric, but sometimes they intersect because obviously we had observability for Elasticsearch as well. Recently, we changed this chatbot app, and for people who don't know what RAG is, basically it's just getting data from another store into your context, which I described earlier, so that the answers can be more relevant. And this is using a special feature in Elastic called Ansah, which is quite handy to reduce some cruft as far as how you normally have to work with embedding data. So when people say about embedding, usually what you have to do is this thing called vectorization, and you load the data. You have to do some commands with a specific model in mind to go ahead and load the data into your vector database. And so in the case for Elastic, we have a plugin that basically allows you to sort of like skip some steps because this Ansah thing does the embeddings part internally. And that's quite handy. So while this code may be difficult for people to look at, what's happening here is that the data is like some content, like some JSON stuff about like information about this is about our company, and then it's being loaded in. And one thing that's very common is you have to watch like what size of chunks in Elastic. LangChain has some strategies for doing that. Now, once the data is loaded, you can think of this as like an ingest time thing. Then it's available for use, and an application, in this case, the API, will be able to query that data. And what happens is that it goes ahead and it looks at the user's question, and then it tries to retrieve semantically similar data from the database. And in a normal process, what happens is that you would use an embeddings model, and you would manually, or your program would do this. It would convert your question into vector embeddings, and then it will try to find something similar to the question. That will be the document chunks, and then it will try to produce the response with that in mind. And if everything is done well, then those chunks that would be returned back would be relevant to what's asked. This is kind of what I hope it's an okay overview for being unprepared to answer that question. But basically, that's how you can get things that wouldn't be in an LLM, like what is your work from home policy of your company, because that's going to be something in Elasticsearch. That's not going to be something like on the web. Well, I mean, it might be for your work from home policy if you're that telling about your internal policy, but for us, I think it would be. Anyway, if you want to look more on that, there's actually a lot on Elasticsearch Labs. They go through this like step-by-step search labs, and you can find some tags on that, or you can ask us to do more presentations.
Yeah, I send the link here too on the chat. So let me find it. Oh, it's here. Search Labs. Also, so Robin, I saw you said that actually would like to request Adrian to speak on OTel sometimes. We should also, you're based in Sydney, if I remember correctly, and we'll probably have a very interesting session about that on our track at Elastic on Sydney. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And
Good.
yeah,
I should mention that we had a recent blog. I'm not sure if you saw it, but in the Elastic Observability Labs on EDOT and OpenAI. So we can share the link to that because that one is also covering the Java SDK. So I think you asked about that. So the Elastic's distribution of Java now includes it like I will warn you that OpenAI's Java SDK is quite new, so they're changing it like quite a lot. So it is itself a fairly fast-moving thing.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Robin. Thank you for being here. And Kwabena, do you want to say something?
I don't know, not really, but yeah, I really enjoyed the Gen AI talk because I've been playing around with Llama myself on my computer and trying to figure out some, the RAG architectures, and they seem to be, evolving over time. I think someone talked about LangChain as well, and what it does in the flow. So and I was really one thing that I learned today was like testing these things, right, and unit integration. So that's something that I haven't done. I just like play around with it. So that was interesting to see as well. So that was awesome.
All right. So just a reminder, this meetup will be here on our channel. So there will be a recording here. So if you want to watch later or send to a friend, maybe someone that couldn't watch, feel free to spread the word. And thank you very much, Adrian, Kwabena. And for you, if you want to speak at the next meetup, if you're watching us, ping me, message me, add me on LinkedIn. Let's talk virtually. It's easier and it doesn't matter where you're based. So yeah, we can definitely do something together and just need to communicate. So thank you very much. You all have a good
night. For folks out of time zone for coming in, spending time with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. Yeah. Someone started at 5 a.m. That's crazy.
Yeah, get a coffee.
and the folks in Canberra are staying late as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
That's nice. All right.
Until next time. Bye.
See ya.